What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with our top 10 tight end rankings, our way too early rankings for 2022 fantasy football. If you guys have been following along this week, we've been going through our early top 10 running backs, top 10 wide receivers, top 12 quarterbacks. Today, we're going to tackle the top 10 tight ends and some strategy points on how we're going to handle this position in our fantasy drafts this year. So if you guys enjoy this video at any point, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. Make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy, sponsor of this video. You can take this advice right into action using the promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit. You'll get 100% back on whatever you put in. So if you put in $50, you'll have 100 on the site to play with. That'll be 4 entries into the Best Ball Mania 3 contest, going fast and furious right now.
Yeah, no, and to be quite honest, if you want to win that money, if you want to win Best Ball Mania 3, as ugly as it sounds at this tight end position, you're going to need a good one. You're going to need one that can give you a serviceable production or potentially elite production from some of these top guys, pending, as always, as I always say, opportunity cost. But yeah, I'm ready to roll up these sleeves and get into the yucky position that is tight end.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into the yucky position that is tight end, as always, got to hit the intro. All right, so some of the strategy points that we take in the tight end position, and this is probably one of the positions we differ the most at, probably the position we differ the most at. Danny's much more on the side of early round tight end, get yourself a stud, that weekly ceiling factor positional advantage. Whereas me, I'm kind of focused on like the raw point potential that I'm giving up at wide receiver or running back if I pass on one of those potential studs at those positions for a positional advantage at the tight end. So I don't mind personally my tight end on my roster being a less than stellar option or a guy that is the weakest point on my roster. The one caveat I will say with underdog ADP, which is what we're going to be using with all these tight ends, is that it might be slightly inflated due to the fact that these elite options are pushed up the board because most people assume in these large field tournaments, you need an elite one to get those elite weeks. And also because you can't stream the position, you can't trade for any tight ends. You can't make, waiver claims to pick up a tight end in a managed league. You can do all those things. So that's why I think partially why we see these, elite tight ends go a little higher on underdog versus a managed league.
Well, adding to that, for most teams on underdog, you're getting 2, 3, sometimes 4 tight ends in a singular team. Therefore, the scarcity of the position as a whole is going to be brought up if more teams are rostering tight ends. When you're in your home league, realistically, like somebody's rostering at most 2 tight ends at a time. Nobody, like if you take Travis Kelce realistically in the first, second round, you're not drafting another tight end. If you take Andrews, you're not drafting another tight end. Also, I quickly want to add in terms of the strategy point, the way I kind of view the tight end position overall as a philosophy is that I'm either going to spend early, I'm going to spend, on an Andrews type on, up until the Waller, Kittle, Pitts area around 4 or 5. If I do not get an elite difference making tight end like that, I have no problem punting the position. I have no problem waiting until round 10, round 11, where we get into the, Zach Ertz range, the Cole Kmet range, the
Hunter
range
Henry,
like that. Where, exactly. Because realistically, like tight end 6, tight end 7 on, separate them by a fingertip. Separate them by quite literally like a potato chip. That is like the difference between tight end 6 and tight end 15 on a year-to-year basis. If you are not getting an elite one, you may as well just punt and accept better opportunity costs down the road in your draft.
Yeah, so for me, I usually like to take the approach that I'm going to try and predict breakouts with tight ends because I know I can get them at less of an opportunity cost. I get all my great wide receivers and running backs, potentially an elite quarterback early on in the draft. Whereas specifically, if I'm going to choose one onesie position to go after early in the draft, it's going to be quarterback over tight end because I think we're much better at predicting the elite quarterbacks than we are the elite tight ends, as much as we are pretty, comfortable in these top guys. I know I can get, Dawson Knox, Dalton Schultz. There's a guy or two like that every single year off of waivers. And it's something that I pay a lot of attention to because I don't typically have a good tight end on my roster. So when one pops up after a week, I make sure to allocate a good amount of my fab to that. Or I can weasel, a Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts type in a trade after a couple down weeks in a row because people are very reactionary. And I've won 3 championships in the last 2 years. I played in 5 redraft leagues. I've had an elite tight end on my roster every single year, and I did not draft an elite tight end once.
How translatable that is for the majority of the leagues, we have yet to
Everybody
see.
plays
But
reactionary fantasy football, man. You're going to find there's 4 or 5 elite tight ends or very good options at the tight end position every year. Once you get 2 or 3 bad weeks out of one of them, there's bound to be a manager in your league that starts to panic a little bit and is willing to trade you a downgrade at the tight end position for an upgrade because you have an extra wide receiver or running back or something.
and that's more so playing your league micro market. If you know that you're in a reactionary league and you can make that type of move, sure. But from a pure macro standpoint, from a pure structural roster building standpoint, banking on that happening is just kind of inconsistent. So that's my one caveat.
I don't
Again,
know. To me, all fantasy players are reactionary, so I can bank on that happening. It's yet to have failed me in any league that I've played. So the last point that we want to talk about here is that even on a site like Underdog, obviously you can't, pick up waiver players and you can't make trades. Even on a site like Underdog, because for the most part, the weekly ceiling is why these tight ends go higher because George Kittle and Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, they can put up like 30-point games, which, Dawson Knox, Dalton Schultz, they can't do that. Like their ceiling game is usually like a touchdown and 50 yards, or maybe they score 2 touchdowns or something like that. But if I stack up 3 options, like for example, my best advanced rate team in Best Ball Mania 2 last year had Gronk, Hunter Henry, and Pat Freiermuth on it. So I would have gotten a lot of spike games out of those guys. Obviously, that's an extreme example because I picked out a bunch of late round tight ends that all hit. But that's my point, basically, is there's probably a couple guys in the late rounds that you can get that are going to score 6 to 8 touchdowns or whatever. And you can stack up maybe not all 3 of those guys, but maybe 2 of them hit.
If you can guarantee me a Gronk every year, round 12 every year, like I'm not taking an early.
Well, he's currently going in like round 11, so
which we'll get into.
Now.
we'll get into, especially when he's donning that Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform yet again within the next couple of weeks. That's going to be shooting up to round 5.
Yeah, and I would gladly take him over Darren Waller, but we'll get into that. So let's start with the first tight end, the guy that is ranked the highest for us. You actually have somebody different than I do. I have Travis Kelce number 1. You have Mark Andrews number 1, which is weird because I'm typically the guy that rips on Travis Kelce. But we're going to start with Travis Kelce. He's tied for our tight end 1. He is tight end 1 currently on Underdog, 11.8 overall. So he is 1-2 turn pick as it currently stands. My issue with drafting Travis Kelce round 1, because everybody knows like the good about Travis Kelce. He plays for the Chiefs. He's got a high target share, all that kind of stuff. My issue with drafting him in round 1 is that even if he reaches his ceiling, and we've seen his ceiling was 20.9 PPR points per game in 2020, tight end ADP in best ball is, like I said, inflated because you can't stream or trade. Here's my concern though. In 2021, the Chiefs passing offense averaged 6.8 net yards per attempt. We noticed it. They looked a little bit worse than they've been in years past. They had 25 turnovers as well. We noticed that the offense wasn't quite as dominant as it's been in years past. Are we expecting the lack of Tyreek Hill being there to help with that? Or is that going to make it at least the same or worse? To me, I think Kelce is probably in line to at least match his career high in targets, if not even break it. Tyreek Hill has been missing the last few years in 4 games. And in those games, Travis Kelce has less PPR points, less touchdowns, less yardage, despite having more targets in those games. So I think just as a general philosophy, Tyreek not being on the field, it doesn't open up as much space for Kelce. He's going to be less efficient. Could he have 160 targets this year? Absolutely. He's a volume play, a good one, definitely a very good volume play, but he is also a little bit older. He has a little bit more risk of injury as a result. Probably not somebody I end up drafting unless his price falls to like the mid-second round.
The thing with him and Andrews is if any of them fall to the mid to late second round is when I'm typically in on them. But if I have to take them over Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, even DeAndre Swift, that's where I'm out. I have no problem taking whoever's cheaper. Kelce usually goes a bit earlier than Andrews, and as you guys will see, I do have Andrews at number 1, so I'm going to end up with a lot more Andrews than I will with Kelce. But you kind of outlined the bull case. I mean, he can command targets. He's got Patrick frickin' Mahomes throwing him the football, and as long as he's touching the football field and playing 17 games, like he's going to flirt with 10, 11, 12, 13 touchdowns for a tight end that's going to put up at minimum 1,100, 1,200 receiving yards. So yeah, the pros are there, but the cons, 33-year-old tight end, we don't necessarily know how many more years he has left. We don't necessarily know when he's going to start showing the signs of what a 33-year-old player who's dominated for the last 7 years will show. I mean, we going into the last season, we're saying the exact same thing about a guy like Julio Jones. Julio Jones, one of the best receivers of all time, best receiver of his decade, fell off a cliff. Betting on players that are this advanced in their career just gives me a lot more uneasiness. So again, with the Mark Andrews versus Travis Kelce tiebreaker, I'm going to lean on the 27-year-old player that is going to command and show up comparable output rather than Travis Kelce. So overall, I mean, I like Kelce. I think he's still got, as you said, an incredibly high ceiling, but there's a lot more caution to be had. And I kind of mentioned my tight end one is, in fact, Mark Andrews, tight end from the Baltimore Ravens, currently going off the board. Tight end 2, 16.9 overall on Underdog Fantasy. 16.9 is probably a little bit too high for me, but as soon as he falls to like the 19, 20, 21 area, I'm more than fine with it because we're going to get into the ambiguous area of that running back texture and get off these surefire studs at wide receiver. So 19, 20, no problems with that. But let's talk about Mark Andrews and basically outlined how special of a season he is coming off of from 2021. So this past season, he commanded a 26.6% target percentage, which was first in the NFL, and a 30% target rate, which was actually second in the NFL, along with a 17.7 PPR point per game output en route to an overall tight end 1 finish. And for me personally, the biggest question mark that a lot of you are going to raise, I'm sure Corey's going to raise with Andrews, would be the overall potential decrease, which is what we can see from the Baltimore Ravens passing attack. Again, last season, they were 23rd in neutral pass rate and had the 9th most passing attempts. A big uptick from what we've seen in the past from that Baltimore Ravens ground and pound, run you down type of offense from 2019 and 2020. Due to the returns, obviously, of, a guy like J.K. Dobbins, a guy like Gus Edwards, maybe changing that offensive philosophy back to what was successful for the Ravens. However, not enough people are really outlining the potential increase in efficiency that we could see from this passing offense. This passing offense last year threw 19 total touchdowns in 17 games. Lamar Jackson, in the 12 games he played, had a 4.2% touchdown rate en route to 16 touchdowns in 12 games. I'm not, saying he's going to, pause a regression. He's going to go, back to 2019 MVP, 9% touchdown rate type of numbers. But from falling 9% to 6.9% 2 years ago to 4.2%, I feel like we're going to find a happy medium there. And realistically, if we're giving this passing offense 25 to 30 touchdowns, Andrews was a guy who commanded 9 total touchdowns on this offense on 19 total passing touchdowns that were thrown. So even if we, situate that passing attack, situate his overall target volume down due to the lack of passing volume we can project from last year compared to this year, he is still going to be flirting with that 27, 28% target percentage, especially with the departure of Marquise Brown in that offense. If Mark Andrews is commanding 140, 145 targets, potential increase in touchdown rate from Lamar Jackson, this passing offense, we could still be looking at a 1,400 yard, 12 touchdown type of year from a guy as efficient as Mark Andrews is. So that's why I'm still willing to bet on him. Also do, as I said, the tiebreaker of age between Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce.
I loved Mark Andrews last year. And part of the reason I loved him is because I could get him in round 4 and 5. I'm not drafting a tight end in the middle of round 2. I'm just not going to do it. I think there's running backs and wide receivers going in that area that have 20 point per game upside. And again, this is kind of a philosophical difference. As good as Mark Andrews is, raw point total upside for him is 17 points per game, 18 points per game. I'll take the potential that Leonard Fournette has a 22 point per game type of season, or Mike Evans has a 21 point per game type of season in that type of area of the draft. So it's nothing against Mark Andrews. I just think he's a little overvalued relative to the running backs and wide receivers going around him. But like you said, if he slides a little bit, I'm cool with him. Let's move on to the next tight end. We'll try and speed these up a little bit, but those high end guys are definitely a conversation.
Worth conversation.
Part of the reason I don't like the high end guys is because I don't think there's a huge difference between a guy like George Kittle and them. And the case for Kittle is quite simple. He's tight end 5 right now, 49.8 overall on Underdog Fantasy. The case for Kittle is equally as appealing as it was last year, in my opinion. Superstar talent, elite target share for the position, who's capable of those rare performances on a weekly basis, 25, 30 point per game type of performances that very few tight ends in the NFL can actually, put out, especially in a large field tournament like, Best Ball Mania or something like that. That's very valuable. Debo and Ayuk both had productive stretches last year, yet we still had a 25% target share for George Kittle, which was the tight end 4 in points per game and one of the highest target shares at the position. It was actually higher than Travis Kelce's. The only person who had a higher target share was Mark Andrews last year. Of the elite guys, he's definitely the best value for sure, because to be honest, I don't see a huge difference between Kelce, Andrews, and him, especially not 35 picks or 2.5 to 3 rounds of ADP. If Kittle was going, early 3rd round, which is where I think relative to Andrews and Kelce, it's probably where he should be going. It's kind of surprising to me that Kittle is the one that is sliding that far.
Yeah, and I actually tweeted this out. I'll probably add this to the doc. I was actually replying on a Kelce versus Kittle type of thread. And the way I look at it, again, I'm always looking in the frame of opportunity costs. I'm looking at it as Travis Kelce, and on Underdog Fantasy, if you guys are on it right now, promo code FSC, by the way, 100% match back. You guys could see that Travis Kelce is going around the 10-11 range. George Kittle, as you said, going around that 49-50 type of range. From a sheer swappable type of comparison, would you guys rather have Devontae Adams and George Kittle or Travis Kelce and Cortland Sutton? Because that's basically the comparable wide receiver versus tight end range you are looking at. Yes, I project a guy like Kelce to outscore George Kittle, but from a straight opportunity standpoint, like George Kittle, from a talent, from a target share, from an offensive standpoint, should still be, when he's on the field, a 14, 15 plus point per game tight end. So I just think this is a big market inefficiency on George Kittle's pricing. I think, as you kind of said, he should be a mid third round type of player, but the fact that he's going at the back end of the fourth, go scoop that value.
Yeah, exactly. And a guy that is going in the mid third round right now is tight end 4 for us in Kyle Pitts, tight end 3 off the board right now, 32 overall. Now, I would personally just rather Kittle straight up over Kyle Pitts, let alone at a 17 pick discrepancy. So I'll let you, take it away with him.
I mean, the bull case is simple. Yes, I do prefer Kittle, but I still like Pitts, and I still think, back end third, early fourth range, he should still be in that discussion. Because, I mean, when we're looking at the peripherals, this is a 20.3 target share player that is just coming off the second best seasonal rookie tight end output that we have ever seen. We're looking at a over 1,000 yards, 110 targets from a 21-year-old genetic freak prospect that was coming into the NFL. That's what Kyle Pitts basically provides you. And it's funny because the main criticism of Kyle Pitts was his unsustainably low touchdown rate. 110 targets should not be netting a 6'6", 245-pound Megatron-esque athlete one touchdown. If you are banking on a guy like that producing one touchdown per year throughout his career, I'm sorry, you are in for a rough time. Kyle Pitts, yes. Is he going to be, a 15 touchdown scorer and what should be a bad offense with the Falcons? Probably not, but given his talent level, given the targets he's going to command, we could easily see this progress to the 6 to 8 touchdown range. And if we're getting that from, as we said, a wide receiver basically and a tight end body that is being used out wide, being used in the slot, and still getting that tight end designation, I am willing to take these dart throws on a guy like Kyle Pitts because, to put it simply, he is going to have a blow-up monster, 1,300-yard, 1,400-yard, like 12 to 15 touchdown year in his range of outcomes, given his talent level at any point. And until that happens, he's going to have a third, fourth round opportunity cost. And I'm sure as heck going to tell you, as soon as he has that year, as soon as he has the year that his talent level would dictate, he is going to be going where Kelce is right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And as someone who had Pitts last year, the entire season, Kyle Pitts is the type, like, if people are worried about, they drafted Drake London 8th overall, is he going to take away targets? Trust me, if you had Kyle Pitts last year, you know that he was actually better when Ridley was on the field. When you have another weapon to take advantage of, mismatches and generate first downs and points and all that kind of stuff, it really helps the offense out. The Atlanta Falcons barely scored any points last year, and part of that is because, Kyle Pitts couldn't score any touchdowns either, but at the same time, you have to expect that a guy this talented is not going to score one touchdown, even if the quarterback play is worse this year, which I would argue it is, with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder being the two quarterbacks that he has to rely on. But again, even from a redraft perspective, this should be a guy, his talent level alone should be able to carry him to at least like 1,000-yard, 5-touchdown type of season. I just think a little bit too rich. I don't think he has a massive ceiling from a point per game standpoint. I think he has a top 3, top 5 finish ceiling at the position, but I think that's like a 14 point per game season.
Yeah, he probably, given the status of this offense, given the lack of access to what should be realistically, the Falcons are going to throw like 20 touchdowns next year. And if the Falcons are throwing 20 touchdowns, as much as I love Pitts, he's probably only got 6 to 8 touchdowns in his range, given the lack of touchdown scoring on this offense, unless you have a complete outlier season, like I said, with Andrew scoring 9 on the 19 the Ravens threw last year. That doesn't simply happen. That doesn't simply grow on trees. If Pitts gets 6 to 8 touchdowns, he's going to be well worth that pick. And given the sheer ability to command targets, I think he should probably reside in that range. But either way, enough on Pitts. We know how the talent level is. We can get on to, I'll let you take away, your 5 and 6, because the second guy on that, double turn, if you will, is a guy that's going criminally low on Underdog right now, given the uncertainty bias that drafters are showing right now. I'll let you go with Darren Waller first and then get into the next guy.
Yeah, I actually have Rob Gronkowski is the next guy, but I have Gronk actually higher than Darren Waller, but you have Waller higher, so it kind of balances itself out.
Offset.
Darren Waller, tight end 4, 42 overall in ADP. Waller kind of just strikes me as the guy that will be the casual player's value. So if you guys play in a more casual league, the reason I say this is because on underdog, he's going about appropriately where he should be going, right? 4th, 5th round type of area. But people in your home leagues, when you guys actually get to your, work league draft or your school draft or whatever your home league is, they're going to see a tight end coming off of an injury-riddled season. Maybe he burned them last year. Now they add Davante Adams to this offense, and they're going to let Darren Waller slide to round 5, round 6 because there's too many mouths to feed, right? The classic casual fan bias. And he could be a big time snag at that point. So depending on your league micro market, I think this is a guy that could be a big time target for me. Davante Adams definitely dents his target share. He definitely impacts how many targets he's going to get. But Davante Adams, like I said, again, with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, he improves the offense. He's going to also free up Darren Waller in the red zone more because we haven't seen a high touchdown output from Darren Waller at this point in his career. I love this Raiders offense this year. I think they have a chance to be really, really good. They're going to have Davante Adams to take away attention from Darren Waller. Darren Waller is going to be more efficient on his targets. He's probably not going to get as many as he got in previous seasons, but he's still Derek Carr's dude, and he's still a guy that's going to feast on the targets that he does get.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in the Dynasty video, but to put it simply, those that are attributing, yes, is Davante Adams getting out into this offense going to impact the target share of a guy like Darren Waller or everybody in the offense, quite frankly? Absolutely. Bringing in a 30-plus target share receiver is going to have that impact. However, if you're more worried about Darren Waller's ability to earn targets rather than ancillary pieces like Hunter Renfrow and I don't even know who else they have in that wide receiver core, but
Anybody else, yeah.
literally anybody else, then you're doing it wrong. Like if Darren Waller's on the field, he's going to operate in a different portion of the field that Davante Adams will. And as a result, I mean, he's still going to be a 105, 110 at minimum target tight end. You're getting that along with offensive insulation and what should be a top 12 to 15 offense with the Raiders.
I think it's going to be a top 10 passing offense.
At worst.
And this is a guy, again, that has 8 to 12 touchdown upside. And we haven't really seen that from Darren Waller because Davante Adams, we know how much attention he commands in the red zone, and it could free up a guy like Darren Waller. So that's the allure for Darren Waller for me, is the fact that he could have like an outlier touchdown season.
Yep. No, I agree. I'm more than fine with this guy in the mid rounds. But either way, the guy that is the extreme value, the guy that I feel like drafters just kind of got lulled to sleep on because he hasn't made his decision yet. Like, take it away with Rob Gronkowski.
Okay, like first of all, there was a report that came out in The Athletic that league sources around the league believe that Rob Gronkowski will re-sign with the Buccaneers. So they must have some kind of like actual legitimate inside information to think that's going to happen. Also just makes sense. Tom Brady's back. Why wouldn't Rob Gronkowski be back? Obviously, if Brady was gone, then there's legitimate question marks of whether Gronk is going to be back. Then we have Gronkowski going off the board, like you said, tight end 11, 113 overall. This is a guy that you can get in the double-digit rounds sometimes. And the thing that I love about Gronkowski is last year he's a guy that was just getting such high-value targets, led all tight ends in average depth of target. He was getting targeted like 10-plus yards downfield, 14 deep targets, 12 red zone targets last year on only 89 total targets, top 6 in targets per route run at the tight end position. Only scored 6 touchdowns last year, too. A guy that in a great offense that threw 43 passing touchdowns, you think he would have had, a high touchdown total, but Mike Evans scored 14 of them. So there's a chance that Gronkowski and Evans kind of balance each other out as far as touchdowns go if he's back in Tampa Bay. Tight end 2 last year in expected fantasy points per game based on all the usage that I kind of just outlined. Tight end 3 in actual fantasy points per game, 14.3 fantasy points per game, despite being limited in a couple games and only playing 6 snaps in week 8 against New Orleans. And if you remove that game, he's up to 15.5 PPR points per game, tight end 3, and again, only on 6 touchdowns, like I said. So, we all know too, Chris Godwin coming off a torn ACL in December, there's a chance that it's just Mike Evans, Gronkowski, and Russell Gage competing for targets early on. I think Gronkowski is got to be the easiest target of any position in underdog drafts for me right now. Yes, there's uncertainty because he could retire, but I think if he was going to retire, he already would have.
Also, you're playing in a tournament with 450 freaking thousand people. Who cares if he retires? You spend a few drafts on him and you took him in the 11th round. Sure, those drafts may be dead. But if he actually comes out of retirement,
you got an elite tight end in the 11th round.
Exactly. Like, you have to think of it from a macro portfolio perspective. If you're in your hypothetical, if you were drafting your redraft league right now, maybe you're a little bit more concerned. But if you're in a big tournament and you're getting access to ADP that other people will not simply have access to, take him. his ceiling is quite literally top 3 in the NFL in fantasy football, period. And you mentioned 15 and a half points per game, just if you bar out that New Orleans game where he didn't play a lot of snaps, on 6 touchdowns. We know Tom Brady's going to throw for 45 touchdowns this year, give or take 40, 45
40 to
touchdowns.
45. Yeah, that's what he's thrown the last
Conservative
2
type
years.
of projection. So if you know that Tom Brady's going to throw 40 to 45 touchdowns, if you know that Chris Godwin's going to miss the first few games of the season, yeah, Mike Evans is going to ball out. Mike Evans is going to have 15 touchdowns this year. Rob Gronkowski could be flirting with 10, 12. He could lead the league in terms of the tight end position at touchdown. So you're getting that at 11th round opportunity cost. Like, yeah, sign me up. You know a reason why I'm passing on these mid-tier 3-ish tight ends? Because freaking Rob Gronkowski's going at the 113th pick.
Yeah, and I mean, not that it really matters, but OJ Howard's no longer there too. Could lead to some more snaps, some more routes for Gronkowski. Yeah, he's just such an easy. If when he eventually says he's coming back, I would rather have Rob Gronkowski than Kyle Pitts, and I'm not kidding. I would rather have Rob Gronkowski than Kyle Pitts.
Discussion. It's a discussion.
Like, because when you think about it, they have a similar, target. Like, the targets are obviously going to favor Kyle Pitts because he's an ascending player still, but the touchdown opportunity for Rob Gronkowski, and we know how good he is at scoring touchdowns, is going to outweigh and how good his offense is and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Gronk, a guy that I'm absolutely heavily targeting. We can go on to a guy on your team, Dalton Schultz, for the Cowboys.
Yeah, we mentioned elite ceiling with Gronk. I don't see elite ceiling with Dalton Schultz. Tight end 6 off the board right now, currently going at about the 70th overall pick in underdog fantasy drafts. More so probably from a stacking perspective. Let's just say you took CD in the 1-2 turn area. You took Dalton Schultz, and then you could wrap around to that 8 and get Dak. That's probably why he gets pushed up this far, because realistically, I don't think he has access to a 16 point per game type of season. 16% target share player is nice, but not elite. 100 targets, should be a good total. He should be, if he stays healthy, a mid tight end 1. The bet on Schultz, though, that I will say, if he were to actually return elite status type of numbers, would have to be a career outlier in touchdowns. We know Dak's going to throw 35, 40 touchdowns if he stays healthy this year. If Dalton Schultz comes down with 10, 11, 12 touchdowns this year, which again would be an outlier. He only had 8 last year, which is a fine number, but isn't in that elite type of category. Dalton Schultz had an outlier year in touchdowns. Yes, he can flirt with that, but he's not going to simply be able to keep up with your George Kittle, your Kyle Pitts, your Rob Gronkowski, your Darren Waller from a sheer target standpoint. So overall, although I like Schultz, and I don't mind, especially if I'm making a Cowboy stat because you need that correlation in best ball. In a managed type of league, I just kind of think it's a trap taking a tight end at this opportunity cost. Because in reality, even if he finishes tight end 5, tight end 6, let's just say, bullish end, the difference between tight end 6 and like tight end 15 is pretty minuscule. And for that reason alone, if I'm in a managed league and I have the choice between spending a 70th overall pick on what I think might be a limited ceiling tight end versus, waiting until round 13 and getting a Cole Kmet who should boast a 20, 21, 22% target share and give you that volume, while again, being a 13th round pick, the only type of advantage you would have at that point is saying Cowboys offense going to throw more touchdowns than the Bears offense.
Right, and you also have the fact that you're probably getting like Rashad Bateman with the pick that you're going to get Dalton Schultz at as it currently stands. Yeah, I'm not really that opposed to taking Dalton Schultz where he's currently going. If I can get him in the 7th, 8th round of like a managed league, I'm fine with that. I don't think it's outrageous to say that he actually does maybe have a bit of a higher ceiling than maybe even you're giving him credit for, because he's still a young player. He's still an ascending player. It's a possibility that he does, take a step forward as a guy with Amari Cooper gone. Now they might need a secondary locked and loaded target to step up, and I think Schultz can be that guy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a fine option. And, you get him at a little bit of discount, I'm more and more willing to do it. It's just Schultz, Goedert, Hockenson, even when we get into the Ertz range, there isn't
whoever's the cheapest of those guys is probably the guy you go with. Yeah, for sure. We could transition right into Goedert, who is currently pretty much the cheapest of these guys. And Dallas Goedert, tight end 8, 96th overall pick. So a guy that you're getting more in like the 9th round type of area. I think another guy that'll probably be in casual leagues pushed down the board because of the too many mouths to feed. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in year 2, coupled with the fact that you have a very solid tight end in Dallas Goedert and a young quarterback who could take the next step as a passer, is why I'm not really worried about Dallas Goedert. Does he have a top 3 ceiling? Probably not, because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are going to eat into his target share. But a better offense means more opportunities for touchdowns, kind of a similar theme we've talked about for a number of these guys. It also means more sustained drives, more offensive efficiency for Dallas Goedert, more efficiency on his targets. So the case for me is pretty simple for Dallas Goedert. He's not going to have 130 targets this year or anything, but could he have 105, 110 targets? Then they're way more efficient than they've been at any point in his career thus far. Absolutely. And we got to also remember too, Dallas Goedert, this is his first year as the starter for the Eagles because Ertz was there the first 6 games last year.
Yeah, no, Dallas Goedert, talent-wise, no issues with him. And to put it simply, if he was in a better situation, he is one of the tight ends out of that top 5 range that I think can compare with your Waller, Kittle area. Maybe not Kittle, because Kittle's probably the best tight end overall from a talent standpoint, but he can compare with them from a pure talent standpoint. But I mean, the issues here would be the target competition. Again, I'm not a firm believer that it's going to impact his floor because he's going to command targets regardless. But having Devontae Smith, AJ Brown there, and what should be at best probably a top 12-ish type of passing offense, even if we're being bullish, it's going to affect his ceiling. The bull case that you would have for a guy like Dallas Goedert would be this Eagles offense going to improve. They're going to throw more in the red zone. They're going to target their 6'6", 250-pound beast in the red zone. That would be the bull case I would see because he's shown the ability to command targets even when the Eagles weren't throwing the ball a ton. Give him some more supplementation from a pure raw volume standpoint, despite the target competition, and give him more valuable touchdowns or targets in the red zone. I don't mind Dallas Goedert at cost. Again, I like Dalton Schultz over Goedert, but when we're mentioning opportunity costs and we're saying, okay, would I rather spend
30 pick discrepancy almost?
So I was about to say, you're mentioning nearly a 30 pick discrepancy, and I'm looking at 67 or 69th pick is about what, the 6th round. If I'm mentioning, a 6th round wide receiver like Elijah Moore versus a 9th round receiver like, who are we even talking about there? Like Juju?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to say probably not even, to be honest. I think Juju probably be off the board by then, like Sky Moore.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, just give me the value at tight end on what should be a comparable player.
Yeah, exactly. I have no qualms taking Dallas Goedert. I think AJ Brown's also going to dictate coverage too, and that's going to help Goedert get a little bit freed. A guy that, I mean, we constantly rip on this dude, but we talk about TJ Hockenson here. Tight end 7, 84.9 overall in Underdog Fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for me to say some rosier words, I mean, maybe Bush can contribute on that regard. Because to put it simply, I mean, TJ Hockenson, he's going to command more targets than Dalton Schultz, but he is Dalton Schultz minus the offensive insulation. Similar type of, average-ish type of athletes. They're not going to do anything crazy from a down the field efficiency standpoint, but they should be, steady, reliable players to convert the chains in their offense, which I don't just bet on non-dynamic tight ends if I'm looking for an elite ceiling. Again, his price isn't bad. 85th overall pick, tight end 7. I don't think, honestly, that's terrible. He should be a 21%, 22% target share type of player if he stays healthy. The problem that I have with him is that what is the upside that we're accessing here?
He'll probably finish tight end 7 and he's being drafted tight end 7. And that's fine. Exactly. But like you said, there's not a huge difference between tight end 6 and tight end 15. So if you don't have that access to at least a moderately decent ceiling, then you're probably not really worth that pick at that point. So with Hockenson, I'm probably just going to, if he falls in the 8th, 9th round, he's the best option on the board. Sure. I'm cool with that. But if I have to spend a 6th, 7th round pick on the guy, I'm probably not going to do that.
This is going to be a little brain wrap for you too. But from a stylistic and from a role standpoint, what is the big difference between what Hockenson represents for the Lions versus, I mentioned Cole Kmet, what Cole Kmet represents for the Bears?
I mean, there's arguments to be made in favor of both guys. Hawkinson's a little bit more proven. Cole Kmet, though, didn't score a touchdown last year, had pretty similar receiving numbers in terms of his target share. You could also make the argument that Justin Fields could surprise this year, and he's definitely going to be, at least on par with Jared Goff, I would say. And also, he's probably got less target competition too. It's just Darnell Mooney there for the most part.
So, I mean, if we're making the argument that you may be able to take a Cole Kmet over Hockenson straight up, again, I'm not going to have it ranked that way, but if you can make that argument and you're getting
Give me Kmet in the 13th round versus Hockenson in the 7th, 8th, then I'll take Kmet there for sure. Yeah, I'm not opposed to taking Hockenson if he falls to round 8 or 9, though. I don't think he's a bad pick there. Agreed. But I probably would pair him with an upside tight end if I can, just to make sure I get some kind of ceiling potential at that position. So the final guy, not really an upside pick either, but a guy that did show quite a bit last year, especially if you guys play in PPR leagues, which most of you do. Tight end 10, Zach Ertz for the Arizona Cardinals, 109.9 overall. Another guy that I think is just a great value, and another reason I'm probably skipping over the tier that we just talked about, because I think Gronk and Ertz are just like way, way too undervalued right now. Tight end 5 in PPR points per game once Zach Ertz joined the Cardinals in week 7. 5 or more targets in 10 of 12 games that he played with them, and 5 games of 12 where he had 9+ targets too. They rewarded Zach Ertz with an extension pretty quickly in the offseason too. Kyler, hopefully he can finally stay healthy for a full 16, 17 games. And DeAndre Hopkins is suspended to start the season out. So there's a chance that Zach Ertz gets out to a scorching hot, tight end 3 or 4 or something in fantasy to start the year. And maybe you can flip him if you want to. If you don't want to hold Zach Ertz the whole year, and you know that Hopkins coming back is going to like limit his target share or whatever, maybe you can flip Zach Ertz after week 4, after he's had a bunch of good games, for a struggling Kyle Pitts or a struggling, whoever who's going ahead of him.
Yeah, or maybe, you package like a wide receiver 4 archetype that had 2 flash 60-yard touchdowns.
Yeah, and you get up to Waller or Kittle or Gronk or someone like that.
Well, I was just going to say, like, what if, like, KJ Osborne has a couple games, to start the year where he goes like 3 for 70 and a touchdown, or like 4 for 83 and a touchdown.
Catches a couple long touchdowns or something.
Right? Like, if that happens and you put, by week 4, what should be like the wide receiver, like 23 attached to, Zach Ertz, who may be the tight end 4, and, you're in a more casual league and somebody says, well, Kyle Pitts is tight end 9. He's giving me tight end 4 and wide receiver 23. Like, yeah, I'll take that. And I'm sure like Bush will get into those micro type of comparables.
Oh yeah, I cover that shit all the time. And it sounds crazy at the time, but again, we got to remember what the in-season mindset is, especially of players that maybe are not as in tune with the trade situation, and they really don't know what they're doing. There's a chance you can get away with some stuff like that. So again, it's all dependent on how sharp your league is and how people trade. But anything else to add on Zach Ertz or any of these tight ends, or should we head out of here?
Now we should head out of here. We're running at about 40 minutes. If you guys have made it this
far, which is way too long to be talking about tight ends, by the way.
Exactly. I just wanted to say, again, we went more so in depth on some of those top options, kind of differentiating, our differences in philosophy. So I'm sure the viewers would get more value from that. But either way, if you've made it this far, comment down below. Tight ends are yucky, because I mean that is just a theme of FSC and tight ends. Like, to put it simply, we don't want them, but knowing that you have to start one, you got to break them down. So hopefully you guys can hit on that right one, hit on that next breakout tight end that could potentially win you a league.
Yeah, and that's usually my department. I'm usually the spot the breakouts tight end guy, because I refuse to draft one early. It's like buying like a new dress shirt when I know I can go to a thrift store and get like a barely used dress shirt that's very, very high quality for like $5, because I do it all the time. So that's pretty much how I handle the tight end position. I'm a bargain bin tight end shopper. So
dumpster diver, baby.
Like Danny said, if you enjoy the video, like, comment, subscribe. Check out Underdog Fantasy if you guys want to take some of this right into action, get some access to these tight ends. We're going to be in Brooklyn next week, in a couple days from you, when you guys are watching this on Saturday, and we are super excited. I swear to God, if Rob Gronkowski signs with the Bucks before Tuesday, I'm going to be irritated, because I want to get all the value on Gronk before that happens, and I will be really, really mad if he decides to sign there before I can snatch up any of that value. So with that being said, peace out, guys. We'll talk to you soon.